I think the first one, Rohit. Hey guys, I'm looking to power up my press release organization page with some PBN links. What anchors would you recommend? And PBN providers. Also, are you hitting the main organization page itself or internal PR article pages? Yes, both. But if you're going to choose one target, then the organization page is my preferred target because it lists the existing the press releases that have been published are linked to from the organization page. It's like a blog index page, right? So it's an archive page that has all your brand information, NAP, name, address, phone number, an embedded Google map, the embedded website. It's got the 0x0 pixel at the bottom underneath the website embed where you can put the ID page or whatever else you want to iframe in there. So it's a very, very powerful page to hit with links because it will not only power up your whatever's linked to from that page, meaning your website URL plus the GMB map or the Google business profile map and everything else that's iframed in there, but it also powers up the individual press releases because they're linked to from that page. So if you're going to do just one target, that's it. However, I would recommend that if you understand press release silos or siloing press release, PR stacking, there's a number of terms for it. They're all interchangeable. It means the same thing. Then it also makes sense to take specific press release silos and, set up separate link building campaigns to hit those press release URLs. I use the Press Advantage press release URLs, not any of the others. And that's just because I like to continually power up that, the press releases on the Press Advantage domain, as well as, like I said, it kind of flows back through to the organization page, right? Because if you look at the individual press releases published on the Press Advantage domain, there's always a link back to the organization page on that as well. And then also the most recently published press releases are at the bottom too. So again, hitting individual press releases can also flow back to the organization page. What I'm talking about with the silos is if you have a specific keyword set or keyword theme that you're trying to power, boost or get to optimize for, then when you do a press release silo and you target that keyword cluster, right? Now you've got all the press releases that you could target with a very set specific type of link building and anchor texts that are relevant, super relevant, hyper relevant to that particular keyword theme, right? So that topic cluster. And so again, it just depends on what it is that you're trying to do. Now, if you're just trying to do a general powering up of the Press Advantage organization itself, and you're not going after a specific topic cluster, for example, or keyword set, then yeah, you can just power up the organization page, which is what I would do. And I always start with that to begin with. So PBN providers, there's a number of them that I like. Some good PBN providers for tier 2 PBN links is rankclub.io, rankclub.io. That one's pretty good. I've tested that on a few and I like it. There's also some really good providers on Legit, legiit.com. I've been testing a whole lot of providers over there last few months now. I found a few. I'm not going to reveal my favorites here at Hump Day Hangout. That's more stuff that I reveal in the mastermind. We're on one-on-one conversations if you join the mastermind. I was just talking about how I had my one-on-one call with David today, and David's a good guy, and I revealed a couple of my inside sources to him today. So yeah, there's benefits. Membership has its benefits, I should say. But yeah, as far as anchor text, guys, if you're hitting the organization page, go with brand and URL to begin with. That makes sense, guys. Remember, when you're powering up tier 1 assets, in other words, when you're building links to tier 1 assets, they're branded assets, right? So it still makes sense to use a lot of brand/URL anchors, and those are in the same anchor text category. If you guys have gotten our formerly the Google My Business process checklist, right? GMB process. Now it should be updated to GBP, Google Business Process Checklist, or excuse me, Google Business Profile Checklist. That's a mouthful. It's going to take a while to get used to that. But anyways, you'll know that I talk about, the 5 different types of anchor text categories that I basically learned these types of anchor text categories from Matt Diggity. But that's brand/URL is one, right? Then there's topic anchors, which are keyword anchors. Then there's target anchors, which is keyword plus location modifier. Then there's miscellaneous anchors, which are the same as generics. And then there's empty or frame anchors, which are, like an iframe is an empty anchor or a frame anchor. an image, a hyperlinked image without alt text. If it has alt text, the alt text is the anchor text. So then that would fall into another type of anchor text category, right? Depending on what the alt text is. But if it's an image link without an alt text, then it's an empty anchor. Also a redirect. So a 301 redirect is an empty anchor or a frame anchor. Like it goes into that same category, if that makes sense. So there's 5 different types of anchor text categories that I classify any type of anchor into one of those 5 categories. And so, like I said, when powering up tier 1 branded assets, it makes sense to build naked URL or brand/URL anchors to those, because it's a branded asset, right? That might not make sense if you were like building tier 2 links to just a tier 1 link, but a branded asset link, it makes sense to do that because it's clearly about the brand. It's been optimized for the brand. So that's always good. But here's what I like about, using tier 1 entity assets as the primary targets instead of the money site for link building, because you can get away with doing a lot more target type anchors, right? So I don't like building links directly to the money site itself with any sort of target anchors, maybe, a handful, a couple of them here and there. And again, I talk about this in some of the training that I've done in some, the mastermind and other areas. I get into a lot more specifics about it, but with something like, Press Advantage, the organization page, it's got high authority. It's going to have a follow link from the NAP section of the organization page back to whatever website you put in there as the primary website for the organization page. It's got the GMB map embed, right? It's got then your primary website URL is going to be iframed at the bottom as long as it's on SSL, right? HTTPS, it'll iframe into the bottom. And so my point is, you can hit that page with some target anchors, keyword plus location, right? And you can push that through the naked URLs and the iframes, kind of that relevance through, without it being the same as if you were building target anchors directly to your money site. Does that make sense? Because you got to be real careful with that, guys. Again, I've talked about this in various venues where I've trained about the Google Business Process Checklist. But if you go do and in the process checklist, when you get to the tier 1 link building, there's a local link building workbook template that you can copy into your Drive account. And I give an example in there. There's the data template, which is the first sheet that has, the formulas and everything else in there, where you just, it talks, and you go in and you just go do an analysis of your top 10 ranked competitors for whatever search query it is you're targeting or you're optimizing for. The second tab in that sheet was just that second sheet in the workbook, I should say, is just an example. I think I used Tree Service Baltimore was the keyword there. And it shows examples of that. So what we're looking at in there are the top ranked local business websites for whatever search query it is you're optimizing for, not directory sites. That's comparing apples to oranges. We want to compare apples to apples or oranges to oranges, not apples to oranges, right? So we don't even analyze the directory sites, the big directory sites. They're not truly what we're competing with. Yes, we're competing with them for space on the first page of Google, but when you take a look at when you try to analyze a directory site, you'll see that they have way more content on the page, usually because of endless scroll. There's by magnitude of sometimes 4 or 5. In other words, when you're comparing local business competitor websites, in the space that I'm in, which is tree services, the average is probably about 800, 850, 900 words is what you'll see. But on the directory page listings or the directory pages that are in the top 10, you'll see 3,500 words, right? You'll also see like a domain authority, and I don't mean like Moz domain authority, but like a proprietary authority. Like, for example, if you're using Surfer SEO to analyze the SERPs, you'll notice that a lot of like the directory sites like Yelp, for example, have like an authority score of like 9. Home Advisor, Angie, or formerly Angie's List, Lawn Starter, which is another big name it's a directory for like home landscapers and lawn and tree service and stuff like that. And you'll see that they have like real high domain like authority scores. And again, there's not a Moz score, but that's true as well. Moz domain authority is also real high on those. And the local business sites will have 1. Their score will be 1 on a scale of 1 to 10. That's 1, and the directory sites are like 8, 9, 10. Does that make sense? And the difference in keywords or amount of words content on the page is huge. Like I said, average for tree service contractors is somewhere between 8 to 900 words. but the directory sites will have like 3,500 words. So you don't want to compare on those. So to get back to what I was saying was, let's say you've got 6 local business websites on page 1. Well, you go analyze the backlink profile of those. And then and why I like to use Majestic, guys, is over any other the other tools, is Majestic has a filter built in that just filters out links. It doesn't even display them. I guess if you go into the historical index, you can see them. But if you're looking at the fresh index, they have filters in place that, like, by default, filter out all the real low quality links that really provide no value. So all you're looking at are any links that really really push any link equity at all, right? And so that's why I like to use Majestic. I've tested Majestic versus Ahrefs or Ahrefs versus Moz Pro versus other tools that I've looked at too. But and out of all of them, my favorite is Majestic because of that. It really only focuses on the links that are really pushing any sort of power at all. And so when you analyze your top ranked local business competitors there, you'll, at least in the space that I'm in, guys, like, you'll see that the vast majority of top ranked local business sites have like less than 20 referring domains, which is insane, right? I mean, it's like, I remember years ago, you'd be competing with on hundreds or even thousands of referring domains for the top ranked, and it's not that way anymore. And so what I'm saying is, then it's real easy to just go to the backlinks tab in Majestic or whatever tool you're using, and you can just scan down. It's a manual process. I haven't built any tools for this yet, but it's a manual process. But you can just scroll on down and look at the anchor text types for each one of the links and just categorize it. So again, if it's less than, and by the way, when I say backlinks in referring domains, I look at referring domains, not backlinks, because you could have 50 backlinks from one domain, and there's going to be one backlink from that domain that is weighted the heaviest, and the rest are not as powerful or given as much credit. So when I look at number of backlinks, I'm really looking at number of referring domains. So if there's less than 20 referring domains, then I'll just scroll on down, and the most notable backlink from any one domain is always going to be the one displayed in Majestic. Does that make sense? So whatever the anchor text is for that link, that becomes the anchor. I categorize it that way. So like I said, if I've got, say 20 referring domains, then I'll just scroll on down. I'll start at the top and I'll just count. Okay, that's a brand, that's a URL. And I'll just, old school, and I'll get down to the bottom of 20 and I'll say, okay, I've got, 7 brand/URL anchors. So I mark it off, 7. Then I'll go back to the top and I'll scroll on down. As I'm going down, I'll count the number of topic anchors, which are very few. It's interesting, but very few topic anchors. Remember, topic anchors are just keywords. Then I'll go back to the top and I'll scroll down. And as I'm scrolling down, I'll count target anchors, which is keyword plus location modifier. And you'll see a couple of those in there, unless it's a real spammy site. And every now and then you'll see a spammy site, and you'll see a ton of those. But for the most part, most organic ranked, top ranked local business sites have a very natural looking link profile. And again, I just keep going through that process. And what I've found in my testing and from analyzing hundreds of sites over the last several months in the tree service space primarily, is that about 60 to 85% of the backlink anchor text ratios, or 60 to 85%, are in the brand/URL category. Then about 15 to 20% are in the miscellaneous category, which is generics like click here, website, read more, all those types of terms. And then there's usually just there's a small percentage, usually about 5 to 10% of frame or empty anchors, which again come from redirects, iframes, and image links with no alt text. And then there's a very, very small percentage, usually between 5 to 10% of target anchors, and virtually 0 topic anchors. I mean, occasionally you'll see an odd topic anchor, but for the most part, I don't see those in backlink profiles for local businesses. So it's usually real heavy. And that's why I say, whenever in doubt, if you're not sure about what anchor text ratio to hit, just go with brand/URL anchors. So I tell all of you this, or tell you all of this, because when you're talking about the Press Advantage organization page or any really branded tier 1 asset, you can go heavier there on target anchors, especially if the link from the tier 1 asset that's linking to your money site is a brand/URL anchor. If it's one of those, right? Or a miscellaneous, or a frame, like an empty anchor, then you can target you can hit that tier 1 asset with target anchors so that you can push kind of a more powerful link equity with that keyword relevance into that asset, which flows through a miscellaneous frame or brand/URL anchor to the money site. Does that make sense? So I know that was kind of a long-winded answer, but I want you guys to understand like my methodology on link building, which is, to try to keep all the tier one assets kind of linking to the money site with, I go real heavy on brand/URL anchors. And once I get that, up, then what I'll do is I'll strategically build target anchors to the money site if needed, but I prefer to try to get the push that I want by building anchor text, target anchor text links from tier 2 to tier 1. Does that make sense? And so, again, you can analyze some of your top ranked competitors. Like I just said, use the workbook template that I gave you guys in the Google process checklist. And just go start analyzing, guys. The more that you, especially if you're in a single industry, it makes it easy because you'll start to see kind of a commonality, like trends within that industry as to what is working. And that's what you mimic, right? You meet and then exceed that. In other words, you try to get your anchor text ratio close to what the average ratio is of the top ranked competitors, and just get close. You don't got to be exact, just get close. And again, when in doubt, always go heavy on brand/URL anchors. And then you start doing all of your target anchor link building out at tier 2 to your tier 1 assets. And that's just the safest way in the world that you can do it. However, one last thing I want to mention about that is that I've noticed Google's gotten a hell of a lot better, guys, about just discrediting links that are from sources that aren't topically relevant. So in other words, it used to be where you could go out and just buy, you could buy a link on a high powered page, or place a link on a high powered page, whatever. And if it wasn't topically relevant to what the target URL was from that page, you would still get a boost from it. What I've been finding over the last couple of months now is I can go out and purchase a link or place a link somewhere that has got really, really, really strong metrics, no matter what kind of metrics they are. But if the page that I'm placing that link on isn't relevant to what the target URL is that I'm trying to build the link to, then I get little to no boost from that at all. So it's not worth the effort. In other words, and Google's algorithm, I think, has gotten better at determining that, and that's a way to beat spam, right? To combat spam and combat what we do as SEOs, which is to, if we can find somewhere that's a strong page by metrics, which are usually proprietary metrics, PADA, domain rank, trust flow, citation flow, whatever metrics you use, you can go out and get a link there. And yeah, you might be able to boost your metrics, but does it provide a boost in the SERP, right? Does it provide positive SERP movement, right? Or positioning? And if not, then what good are the metrics? Does that make sense? And so what I found is there are ways to improve that, which I'm not going to disclose here for sure, but there are ways to disclose that. What I'm trying to get at here is what's more important is to find links from more relevant sources if possible. And that does make things a lot harder. But if you can get a link from a relevant source that might, if it's relevant, even if the metrics are a lot lower than, say, an alternative source where you could get a link that the metrics are much higher, but it's not relevant. If you can get a link from a lower, a less strong metric type of, platform or website or page or whatever, but it's more relevant, that produces a better result. And that's the way that I've seen that time and again over the last several months. And, boosting metrics is nice, I guess. I guess it's cool to see that, but if it's not moving SERPs, what difference does it make? So I think having topical relevance is actually way more important than just any sort of particular metric. I know that was a long answer, but I thought that was a good question. So thank you for that question.